So why don't you just start off by kind of giving me a background about yourself, what you do over at Talent Today, and just give me like your area of expertise and where you come from.
Yeah, so I originally went to school for psychology, and I wanted to get into clinical psychology, and it's kind of a joke within the like IO community that this is like everyone's path when they end up in industrial and organizational psychology. So I started out wanting to go into clinical. I started looking into programs, and I found industrial and organizational psychology, and so I started that program. I ended up loving it, and ended up going into that route. So I have worked with the parent company Medix for about 5.5 years. And then once I finished school, I was able to continue on with another team within Medix. And we did a lot of looking at the hiring process for people. So like what tools can we use for like asking the right interview questions and finding the best candidate beyond just what their resume is saying about them, but how can we find the person that has those extra skills besides they went to the right school or had the right degree. And so we've been doing a lot with personality assessments and things like that for a while. So once Talent Today came into the mix, it was a natural transition and flow for me to start working with them. When I started with them, we were developing the My Parent Assessment. So I've been really involved with that process and really seeing how the assessment was built from when it was in a spreadsheet to where it is now. And so I really understand all of those soft skills, how each of these skills is a strength, how these can play into a person's daily role, that motivations piece, finding, what motivates a person and how, like, why does this matter? Why does it matter how somebody's motivated? Okay, well, because if you motivate them properly, they can be engaged in what they're doing. So it's been really, really cool to have that hands-on piece of the product itself with the reports and everything that goes into that. And now that my role has shifted a little bit as we're moving into the US to be more on the implementation part of it. So we are now being able to sell it to clients. And so how can I help clients use this most effectively for their teams, for their businesses? Because it kind of goes back to that originally why I went into psychology was to help people. And so now it's coming full circle of, I'm helping your everyday person at work. How can they be the happiest they are at work and with what they're doing? And how can they be the most engaged in what they're doing? And why is that important? So
that's so exciting. That's such a fun journey. That's awesome that you got to find that. So as far as, because it sounds like you've been there for a little while. So what would you say you've kind of noticed in the years as you're working in this kind of psychology side of things that's happening to soft skills as younger generations come into the workforce? Is everything staying standard, or have you noticed a shift with some of the younger generation with more emphasis on different skills?
Yeah, there's a huge emphasis on a lot of people who are coming in and saying, like, realizing the importance of soft skills. So before it was like, okay, I need to have this right degree and I need to not focus as much on how my communication is going to impact my work. I just need to make sure I have like the right hard skills to do it. And so now, especially, you're seeing, I think it's just with the flow of how much research has been done and how much more prominent this is. So when people are going to school or when they're looking up career tips for interviewing or finding a job, you start seeing more information about how important soft skills are. And as a natural flow, I think that our people who are entering the workforce are really good at starting to market themselves beyond just, this is the degree I have and this is the certifications or the technical skills I have. Those are important, but they're also able to say, but I know that there's a lot of people coming into the workforce right now, and here's what sets me apart. So we're really good at, finding those things that make us individuals and unique and how we can use those different skills. And I'm not saying that it wasn't ever important with the older generation. I just think that their emphasis was more on the hard skills. And so now that we see that more importance of the soft skills, we're seeing more influx of people who are putting a focus on that and developing and growing in that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I know, like, I've noticed, I'm a pretty recent college grad, and even just in the 4 years that I was in school, the shift into making sure you know how to market all yourself as like a whole person instead of just your major has really changed. So that's interesting that you're seeing the same thing. What about on like an organizational side? Because it sounds like you also work with companies. Have you noticed they're looking for different things in younger generations, or how are you seeing their response to kind of this shift go?
Yeah. So, I mean, from an organizational standpoint, you constantly seeing people saying, okay, we've had an issue, and they're just always looking for the answer. So why are we having this issue? We hired the person, we thought we hired great people. What happened? Like, why are we having turnover? Why are we not as productive as we could be? So being able to say, from an organizational level, look at the people you have. What are their strengths, and really focus on those and develop those. Maybe you can repurpose people. That's been a big thing with, growing technology, is that some positions exist that didn't exist before, and some things have been overtaken by technology, but that shouldn't be a scary thing, because we know technology is going to continue to grow. It's not going anywhere. It's not going away. So I think from the organizational level, saying, we need people who can do the jobs that have come as a result of technology, whether it is, being able to maintain that, or organize and structure their work in the realm of technology, like within all the the different apps or platforms that you're using. So somebody who can, organize themselves within that, but being able to say, from an organizational standpoint, how do I use the skills that I currently have to address the problems that I have? How do I look for people outside of the organization to come in and fill in those gaps that we have, and looking for that diversity within your team, as well as looking for the things that are helpful as strengths. So it's looking for those similarities within your team, but also those differences within your team, and how do you use those to your advantage? And I think a lot of that does come in with, the younger generation coming in, or people, like an influx of people coming into the workplace, saying, what skills does this younger generation that has these technology, background, and they've grown up with this, what skills can they bring in from the technology standpoint and from that soft skills standpoint? Because you need people who are able to work with technology that you have, but also being able to fit in with the team and the culture, and engage and motivate everyone based on what their skills are and their motivations are.
Yeah. And how about from a diversity standpoint, because you mentioned that, have you been noticing, I know there's a big public push to increase a lot of diversity in the workplace, and it's been a huge campaign, especially in the last year or so. Have you noticed that companies really are making a push to become more diverse? Do you notice that employees coming in are definitely looking for that on a smaller scale?
Yeah, so there's a study, I wish I had the stats right in front of me, but it's something like, I think it was like 62% of people of the younger people in the workforce, diversity is one of the most important things for them when they're looking at a company. So that has different aspects, right? You have your diversity in the ethnicities and race that you see within a company. You don't want everyone to look the same. You want everyone to come from those different backgrounds. And then you also have diversity as far as, education, skills, where are people from, their socioeconomic status, all of those other diverse backgrounds that you don't necessarily see right away, but they influence a person. And then you also have those soft skill diversity. So that's what we focus on, is how can we help you to diversify the soft skills that you have? Because if you have a whole team that's extroverted, that sounds great. Everyone's going to be talkative and get along with each other. But if you also have that team that's all extroverted, you're going to get really distracted. You can get off topic really easily. People might be talking over one another. You might not get as many complete thoughts. So there's those pros and cons, and understanding, okay, having people who are those quieter people maybe in a meeting, but they're intaking all that information, that's still really valuable. You don't want everyone to be talking over each other the whole time. You want that balance. And so that goes with every soft skill, every personality trait, everything. You can look and say, there's pros and cons to both sides of these. But when you have that balance and have people who can work through that balance, that's what's going to help you think more creatively, and therefore be more productive and have those new innovative ideas, because you're able to structure your work and come up with ideas and talk through ideas and, communicate in ways that complement each other.
Awesome. And I want to kind of transition here into more like of the future questions. But first, I have this question that I'm so curious about. What is like your favorite soft skill? So when you're sitting down with an organization and you're like really trying to sell them on one thing, what is that one thing that like you need them to understand how important it is? What's your favorite kind of point to hammer home?
Oh my goodness. This is a good question that I have a lot. So when I'm thinking of my print specifically, so our assessment that we have, one that I think is really good to have a balance on is your big picture versus focused. So the people who have that perspective, you need your people who are looking 5-10 years into the future and seeing the organization as a whole. You need those people on your team, but you also need your actionable people of saying, okay, I understand that you have this idea that's like way up in the clouds, but what can we put down right now to get there? So I think that both of those skills are so important, and having both of those in a team is really, really important. And one of my favorite quotes, if you've built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That's where they should be. Now you need to put foundations under them. So that's that whole idea of, yeah, build your castles up there. Do that. That's great. You need that. But you also need to put the foundation to get there.
That's awesome. That's like a soft skill I never even would have like thought of to measure. So that's so exciting to hear that from your perspective. Now, something I've been noticing a ton of people doing on LinkedIn is I think they're like doing a reassessment with you guys since this past year and seeing how they've changed. I would love to talk about that a little more. So what trends are you seeing and how people are changing? I mean, you really can't get away with having a conversation without talking about like 2020 as a whole. So I'm curious to see, what have you seen happen this past year and what changes and trends have been impacted by this past year?
Yeah, we haven't gone to quite piece apart all of our things. I'm really excited to look at what the like specifics are, but something that I've personally seen. So within myself, my optimism went up, which is opposite of what I would think. But I think it's because, looking for those silver linings. And also right before the pandemic, I was living in Paris. So I was there in a new country. I don't speak great French. So being able to say, okay, in a time when everything is going wrong, so in another country when I don't know how to find a cell phone that works, and then in 2020 where the world is falling apart, finding any little silver lining, and it's like a survival tactic. You have to find those positive things to keep you going. You have to say, okay, well, at least I can go outside for a walk because it's nice. So I'm going to grab onto those pieces. I might not be able to go to a restaurant, but I can go to the park and have a picnic. So being able to find those little pieces of silver linings was like very important for my overall happiness and survival. So my positivity skyrocketed. Another thing I've seen with a lot of people is they're becoming more assertive. So a lot of times when you think of, talking to people in the office and, you'll sugarcoat things, or you'll have your little chit chat before you get started in your meeting while you wait for other people to come into the room or whatever it is. And things get a little bit like more fluffed up and sugar-coated. But when all we're doing is sending an email or a Google chat or whatever it is, a Slack message, you're being more direct of like, this is the reason why I'm contacting you. You don't have your little like conversations before and after. So as a result, you're just becoming more direct in what your communication style is and what you're trying to say and the points that you're trying to get across. So those are a couple that stick out to me. But I'm really excited to look at what the different trends are that we're seeing.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying it. And like, I never get to see anyone's first. So I'm just so excited about their like second, even though I have no idea where it's going, but I've been enjoying that as well. That's fun. How about what you're kind of predicting as far as the future of work? This is a huge question. Whenever I ask people this, they like have no idea where to start. But let's just start on a small scale. So where do you see work going in even the next 6 months as we get closer to hopefully returning to whatever normal is at this point? Do you think we are ever going to be back to that corporate all in the office type world, or where do you see what we've learned in the past year taking us as a workforce?
Yeah, so this is a hard question. You're right. There's different parts of it. I think that, we'll start getting back to, people going into the office and doing that. But when I talk to people from March of last year to February of this year, almost like the overwhelming majority say, at first I did not like working remote. I didn't ever want to work from home. I want to be in the office. And now people are saying, no, I love being at home and I love working from home. And so It depends. So if your company has seen a lot of productivity, if over the past year you've been able to prove that, you can still work hard and achieve your goals from home, maybe you have done better at home, whatever it is, I think that there's going to be more flexibility there. So I think that even if companies are starting to go back home, some people might say, well, I'm going to find a company or a position that will prioritize letting me be more autonomous and work from home by myself. And I think that's going to be a huge factor, because it's honestly, like, if we just suddenly start going back to the office, that's going to be draining for people.
Yeah.
So to go from like not being in an office for so long to all of a sudden you're there. So I think that it'll become a different priority shift. I know some companies before said nobody can ever work remote. You have to be in the office all the time. And then they were forced to let people work remotely. And so did that go well? Was it rocky? What went on there? But I don't think remote work's going anywhere anytime soon. I think that even if companies are going back, it'll still be an option to work from home if you would like to. So I think that that is an option that will stay for a while.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I cannot see commutes being the same as they once were ever again. But I'm wondering, from kind of your wheelhouse, how do you think that's going to affect those soft skills that we were talking about? So we already kind of started that shift where we started prioritizing those soft skills, but now working in a situation where you're almost completely independent, that requires a whole different really skill set to thrive in that. What do you think we'll see as far as what emphasis companies put on certain soft skills and what soft skills get better developed for employees? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, so as far as what people are going to develop, I think that the way that people structure their days and the way that they think about their work is going to be something that evolves a lot. So people who used to just take things as it comes and whatever their day looked like just kind of happened on its own. I think that a lot of people are learning how to organize themselves better when it's fully reliant on yourself and not on, your boss in the office behind you or like your teammates that are all around you, whatever it is. So I think that the way that people structure themselves is different. And then also the autonomy piece. I think that, being able to, that goes along with that structure, but being able to set your goals and organize your day and prioritize your time the way that you want to, I think that that's also going to be really important, and that workplaces should definitely, especially if people are going back in the office, they need to keep that into account. Like, okay, this person's been structuring their day for a year. They obviously know how to do it. So I need to trust them to be an adult and structure their day and the way that they feel the most comfortable, even if it's not what they did before or the way that your company normally does it. So I think that autonomy is going to be really important. And then also continuing to develop and focus on our communication skills and conflict management skills. Those are things that we can't lose. So even though you're not doing it in person, that doesn't mean that it's not important. We still are communicating. You still need to understand how to format and write a nice email in a way that will reach the audience that you're wanting to reach. So who are you sending the email to, understanding how to adapt your communication to that person. So all of those skills I think are a little bit harder to maintain when you're not around people all the time and constantly like working those muscles, but it's definitely things that I think that people are going to keep on focusing on and need to maintain.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up. I literally just signed up for a training about better email and tech communication, since it's really all we do now, and making sure that it comes across correctly. And I agree. I think that's going to be a huge factor, because none of us talk to anyone anymore. I mean, there's like days where you just sit in only email all day. So that's funny. I'm experiencing that in my own life too. What about, and this might be a really, really broad question, so if this is too hard to answer, that's okay. But I'm wondering if when you pull up like a certain personality assessment, if you can clearly see how that person would work best, either it be in an office or independently. Is there something that you kind of feel points out which is best? Do you see that being something people use for hiring in the future to determine whether or not the person could work remotely?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a few factors that would go into that. And I would say mostly when it's coming to environmental things, you would look more at the motivations piece. So how is this person motivated? And one of our motivation skills is Do you prefer to like work privately or like have interactions with people? So it's like a relation scale. So would you like to work in privacy? That doesn't mean that you never want to talk or see anybody, but it just means I'd rather close myself in a small office and work on that. And the people that I need to interact with, I'll interact with them, versus I'm a person who wants to sit in the middle of everyone else so that in between my work, I can stop and talk about The Bachelor and then go back to work. So there's the differences in like the way that you're motivated, whether you want those constant interactions and you want those like individual relations between people versus working by yourself. And then when it comes to things like autonomy, I would say that that could go either way, because sometimes people who are really autonomous will do fine remotely. And they also do fine in the office. Same with people who would rather have a little bit more guidance and structure from somebody else and support. You can still get that when working remote. So that would just be something to keep in mind. If you have somebody who is a little bit lower on an autonomy motivator, they can still work remotely. Just make sure that you're, reaching out electronically via like chats or whatever it is, or setting meetings to help with that structure to keep that going.
That was an awesome answer. That was cool. So I don't want to hold you a but I feel like I could keep asking you questions forever. But I'll finish it off on this last one. And this really ties into ZIZO because a big reason we were created is that we know the workforce is changing, right? So it's so obvious with millennials and Gen Z coming and becoming the prime source of our workforce. They think so much differently, and a lot of companies are having trouble kind of adjusting to that. From a psychology standpoint and from a personality assessment standpoint, what do you think companies are going to need to do to adjust to those workforces in order to be able to attract those younger talents and to be a more viable option for younger talent? Because I know a lot of times younger employees will like not want to work for the old curmudgeon-y kind of company that doesn't have these big missions and goals. Where do you see those companies needing to kind of fill those gaps?
I think that a big part of this is companies looking at the individual aspects of a person and treating their employees like people on an individual basis versus, oh, like you're just my general workforce and you're all the same to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of what you guys are doing. So with your platform being able to say like, we care about your engagement and you can work your way towards getting these benefits and towards, getting these badges or whatever it is. So you can get that personal satisfaction of what you're doing, because that's important to the company that you are happy and motivated and engaged with what you're doing, versus a company just saying, we're just going to hire you, and if you do well, then cool, you stay, but if you don't do well, then you're out. So being able to say, we care about you enough that we're going to implement something, and we're going to, have this software to help you be engaged in your platform. We're going to do a soft skills assessment to understand who you are as a person. So being able to say, we're taking this extra step to treat you like a person, find out how we can motivate you as an individual, how we can motivate the group as a whole, and really focus on that versus just like treating all your people like another little robot coming in. So I think that that's going to be huge with like our upcoming workforce. And then also finding those motivators. So I think a big motivator that you'll see with the younger generation is that they want to be able to contribute to society. They want to be able to see that bigger purpose of what they're doing. So when you're looking for a job or whatever it is, being able to say, okay, you're a cool company, but what do you do as far as philanthropy? How is your product impacting the people that you're serving? How is this bringing a benefit to this world, or is it just kind of another thing that you're selling to people? So being able to see that that meaningful purpose behind what your organization's doing, I think that's going to be huge with like our upcoming generations.
Yes, I could not agree more. And I love that you kind of pointed out that they're going to need to be able to look at people as individuals more, because I could research all day. So from all of my research, I know that as we grow up with more and more technology and more social media, we really expect a lot more ability to be individuals and have customized life experiences. So I think you're spot on. I mean, I can't imagine a workforce not wanting to be looked at as individuals at this point in society. That was a great point. So I just want to finish up here. Just giving you an opportunity to brag a little bit, maybe share a little bit about like a personal mission or something that you're working on over at Talent Today or personally that you'd like to be able to share, and just kind of take a minute to get that word out there.
We just started releasing our group DNA. And so I have had so much fun with this on a client level of essentially we're saying you can put your team, your individual profiles, and you can say, okay, here's what my team looks like. And it looks like a little DNA pattern. So we have our 13 personalities, scales, and we have 11 motivations. And you can see which side of the scale everyone falls on. You can see the areas that you have, maybe the most people in those areas where there's gaps in your workforce. So it's a really cool tool as far as, finding that diversity within your team. Where are the strengths in your diversity? Like, what are you really balanced on? What are the areas that you guys all have in common? What are the areas where you need to grow? And so from the client level, I've been like putting together some little things if they say, okay, well, what does this mean for my team? So to be able to look at it and say, well, based on what this is saying, your team is probably, they're really assertive. So you guys are fine with voicing your thoughts and your opinions, you're comfortable taking leadership positions, but you need to maybe be aware that, sometimes you guys can discredit what other people are saying or, talk over one another, whatever it is. So it's been really fun to not only use that tool and see how it's been able to be implemented for people, but then on my side of things, getting to like play around with it and say, okay, this is what this means for you. And here's how you can implement it in the future. So that's been my fun thing that I've enjoyed the past couple of weeks playing around with and making for our team at Talent Today. I've been like putting everyone's profiles in there and seeing how everyone matches up against us. It's been really fun.
I would be a total nerd with that. I would be playing with that.
Oh yeah, I love it.
I cannot wait for us to do something with you guys. I'm so excited. I'm gonna go tell Jimmy.
So fun.